Hello, this is a prepaid collect call from an inmate at the county jail. This call is subject to recording and monitoring. To accept charges, press 1. To refuse charges, press 2.
Well, hello, Alex. Yeah, I know. I've heard a lot of stuff about the jails, and you have to keep remembering that's not someplace we want you to be, and we don't want it to be comfortable. So hopefully, you'll be able to get through, make it okay. Yeah, that's pretty much the gist of it. It's one of those things where budget, staffing, resources. There's a lot that can contribute to making it better. I would rather have people just serve a short sentence, maybe ankle monitor. But I don't know. There's a lot of things that are called into play. Well, yeah, I'm glad you watched the video and did some research online, so you'll be ready for the prison when you do get there. But keep in mind the biggest thing are the is medical, and there's people that could go in to the prison healthy and then come out in a body bag, or their health will just drastically drop. So there's a lot of mental issues, physical issues over there. And then, of course, you're subject to new injuries. I know recently there was a girl who had some yogurt and she got really sick and had to miss work. And she just wasn't expecting that when she ate the yogurt, but her body had a reaction to it, and that's something that could happen inside or out. So you got to make sure that if you have any dietary restrictions, you need to watch out for it on your own, because staff changes quite a bit over there. And even though you get to know some people that can help you out with your meals, somebody new could come in and just not know. Recently there was a lawsuit filed against a grocery store because peanut butter cookie was mislabeled. And so a woman who was allergic to peanuts and went out of her way to avoid them. She thought she was biting into something else, and one bite, and she's no longer with us. And I wouldn't put it past something like that to happen there. Can't really blame the prison system for it, but things can happen. And hopefully, if you do get into a situation like that, you'll have a good medical team to help you out, or your own personal knowledge. So, bond with some good friends over there. Let those folks know what's going on with you, so that if something does happen, they'll be able to look for the signs and get you the proper assistance, or just help you out themselves. Right, there's a lot you have to do on your own, and just don't count on them. I would say, as you get to connect with folks over there, just ask questions. What's something that's good? What's something that's bad? Uh, who's good staff members? Because knowledge will get you through, and you really can't rely on the folks to do things for you. Yep, that's exactly what we'll
You
do.
have 60 seconds remaining.
Well, okay. Well, thanks for the call, and hopefully you'll be able to do some research, talk to some people, ask some questions, and walk into that prison with some very powerful knowledge. All right. Yeah, I'll let them know. So you take care of yourself. Roger that. Okay. Talk to you later. You too. Thanks.
You have 30 seconds remaining.
Bye. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to AQS Inmate Call. I am your host, Joel Wilborn. And this phone conversation is based on a phone conversation that I had with a young lady who had an issue with some food that she ate, but she didn't say she got any terrible medical attention or anything. She did miss work and she did take it easy. Of course, she called me and she says, "Oh, my stomach is hurting and I feel bad. I'm so tired." But she was mainly just bored and she just wanted to talk, which was good. I was happy to help her out. But it gave me an idea of something to discuss. And that medical care meal, she was also the one that told me about them wasting a lot of food, which another inmate told me that's common knowledge. We need to tell the public about something that's not that well known, but it's a issue that they haven't fixed, and I'll keep it going until it does get fixed. So medical waste, it could be a waste of anything, waste of resources, a waste of materials, and a waste of person's abilities. You know, we've got people in there that could that are locked up that have some skills that could be applied to the facility, but they're not willing to do that. And another issue is I had a young lady call me and she said she was accused of having drugs. Now I've been doing this prison stuff for decades, and even back in the '80s, drugs was a big issue. And trying to prevent it from going into the prison is impossible because I know during COVID they shut down visitation, and they would accuse the visitors of bringing in drugs. So we would get there and we'd be subject to search. They didn't search me at all when I was visiting, but they had a scanner. And when we got to the visitation area, the inmates were allowed in, but they were carefully watched. You know, it's like you didn't want two people going into the restroom or a person going into the restroom, coming out, and then the inmate going into the restroom. So they did a few things to try to prevent drugs from being smuggled in by the visitors. But of course, during COVID, when there was no visitation, drugs were still getting in there. Anybody. I mean, you can go out and sit down at a group conversation at a coffee shop, and people will most likely turn to the obvious. Staff is smuggling in the contraband. So when there's no visitors going in and drugs are still getting put in there, and people are still dying from drug overdoses, going to the hospital for drug overdoses, or just getting high and wandering around without any incident. So when my friend is telling me about them accusing her of having drugs, that didn't flag anything because I'd expect that. But the way they treated her, she said one time they went in to do a strip search on her, and one of the prison officials was making a comment about her body. And she was real sensitive, and she went to her girlfriend and was crying and upset, and her girlfriend was trying to comfort her. You know, they're lying, and don't worry about it. There's nothing wrong with your body. But she was saying, why would they say something like that? Why would they make a comment that's just derogatory? She said it was embarrassing and humiliating for them to do that. And you know, when I don't know if everybody who's listening has been through a strip search. I know I've never been through one, but just thinking about it, it could be quite it's demeaning. And so this woman, she'll be getting out next year, or actually she'll be getting out later on this year, and she doesn't need any incidents to get her in any trouble or to delay that exit. So she was saying that they had put her through a scan, and the scan showed that she had something, and so they were asking her to give it to her. And she said, "I don't have anything. I have no drugs on me." And they're saying, "Well, no, you need to give it to us. Give us these drugs." But she kept insisting that she didn't have any drugs. And they handcuffed her, took her to an isolation area, she said she was going through her period. She had to poop in front of them, and she had all that stuff. And so all this stuff is just leading to all this humiliation for her. But she was able to get through it. And of course, they didn't find any drugs on her. And even when I was telling this incident to some of the other inmates, they were saying, "Oh no, she's lying. She got into a fight with her roommate," and so they put her in isolation for it. But later on, we found out that she was telling the truth, and so that was good. I had my group of girls that were keeping an eye out for me and verifying stuff, and she was in fact put into this unit for having drugs when she didn't. And they don't want to admit any mistakes. Like got a letter that I read from Deborah Canopy, and she has a podcast and a YouTube video on my channel and on this AQS Inmate Call podcast. And she was talking about how they trust the prison officials over the inmates. And when you look at it, there's not a lot of people that just love going through this humiliation, this strip search fiasco. So why would they lie just to go through that? Or why would they do anything to risk going through that when they knew that coming up imminent? And that could be a great deterrent. If we catch you coming out of the visitation area with drugs, then you'll be strip searched and you'll be put into a cell. You'll be monitored, everything that goes in and out. That might be enough to deter them. But with a drug addiction, yeah, it's pretty obvious that the people are going to do anything and everything they can to get that drug. And so with her not really having a history of drugs, she's in there for murder and she's just about ready to get out and she's been keeping her record clean. It's almost as if they were just doing that just to mess with her. And then of course the previous incident of them humiliating her like that. And I want to try to make her life as comfortable as possible. So I gave her some advice on what she could do to get through this incident, and, who she could talk to and stuff. And that's about the best that I can come up with. So considering I'm not a professional and there's not a lot of resources I have to help her out, I offered what I could. And she felt good. She sent me an email and said that she appreciated me listening to her, which is the number one thing I promote here. Listen to the folks because it makes a difference. And she was able to vent because there's some people in the prison you can trust. Most of the people you can't. A lot of staff members, they'll broadcast stuff because I've run into that quite a bit. I get information because people snitch on them and even staff members snitch and publicize it. Maybe they're looking for their 15 minutes of fame. I don't know. But there's a lot of information that gets out that people don't want to get out. And so having somebody that you can confide in, even though these things are monitored, the emails monitored, phone calls monitored, they feel a little more comfortable. And plus, if she's talking to me on the phone and the information gets out in public, we know what happened and she has a witness. So she wanted to know what she could do, and she had to file a grievance is what we came to, and maybe even contact ombudsman. But there's things she can do. There's rights that she has that we want her to take advantage of. And so I try to advertise that as much as I can, that they're going to keep doing it unless you complain. And then you're going to have to follow through. Now, it's easy for me to relate to this incident because I've told staff members what's going on, but they'll disregard what I say. And for their own benefit, they'll come up with a story and stick with that. And so I get to watch that, monitor that as I go around. For me, it's a lot more convenient because I have a lot of resources available to me that won't be stripped away. I can write letters to my legislators and I can write letters to the prison officials. I can publicize things to you guys on these podcasts and on social media, which is something that the people in prison can't do unless they go through somebody who's willing to speak on their behalf, like a prison advocate. And it can go so far because the prison has the full final authority on it. And what they want to go out, what they want to keep in, they'll threaten people, and it goes on. This is something the public needs to know. They threaten the inmates in there. But when the inmates get out, a lot of them just want to forget that whole thing. I want to pretend like prison never existed is what's going on in their mind. Others want to do something about it. And we had a young lady that got out, and she is doing very well out there. She lets folks know that the prison is a terrible place. They treat people bad. They don't follow the rules. They don't follow laws. And they're not held accountable, and they put the fear of retribution into the minds of the people that are going through these issues. She's advertising that. She's helping folks to, once they get out, she's offering assistance, mentoring to keep people from going in. And that's what we want when the people get out. But there's not a lot of people that want to do that. To me, it looks like it'll help them feel better. I know Paula Gardner talked a lot about doing it, but when she got out, she didn't do much. She was more into herself. This young lady, she wants to get out. She wants to get a college education, and she wants to start groups on the campus to address these issues. And it does affect people. I mean, if you're a victim of a crime, that's the prison thing. If you commit a crime, that's the prison thing. If you have a relative that commits a crime, that's the prison thing. So there's a lot that can get you related to what goes on inside the prison. It's almost like living in a town with a prison, and then the prison closes. Suddenly, the revenue that you got from that prison, the prison guards coming out buying stuff in the community, the prison buying stuff that get delivered to the prison, people driving in out of town, staying in hotels and stuff to visit their loved ones. All of this revenue is gone because the prison is shut down. It doesn't break my heart that the prison shut down, but the community can have that impact. And we see that directly because we don't always see the negative stuff inside the prison, how it affects the community, but shutting down a prison does affect it, especially if the prison was shut down because of illegal activity that went on inside. Now, we're going to have there's only 2 of them in the state of Washington. It's going to be converted. And so the female prisoners are going to go back to the main prison. I do know before they built this prison, there was a little section of the male's prison where they stayed. The way a lot of administrators are doing now by combining just the gender identity and stuff, you kind of wonder why should they have 2 different prisons, a male and female, just have one prison and shut them down or shut a lot of them down and just kind of combine them. But it would make more sense to me since there aren't that many women. Thank goodness women don't commit that many crimes. And then if before sentencing a woman, if they look at the conditions, is this a single parent? Is this person gainfully employed? Is this a once in a lifetime thing? Is it based on an addiction? All these little factors. If they find out that this woman could do better with home monitoring or on probation, or if she had to do community service, could she do that without going to prison? Could we keep the prison population down? Of course we could. But if this woman decides to kill her ex and her kids, and then she goes into a police chase, most likely she's going to commit a crime again. She's a violent offender. And one thing to keep in mind, young folks are more likely to repeat a crime than when they get older. So if you have an 18-year-old who's going to be sentenced, keep them in there for a little bit, give them a chance to grow, learn, change their attitude, and then when they come out, they'll be a better person. And then you have a 60-year-old who most likely isn't going to be committing a lot of crimes anyway, but by then they've learned a lot. So you might say this person could go in for less of a time and get the same result. But it all depends on the individual, because some 16-year-olds they'll never grow out of it. And I watched a news magazine, and they had a person that was coming up for parole, and the family went in and said, no, we don't want this person out. This is not right. And as they started talking to him, interviewing him, yeah, he's most likely to do that. That's the same thing we found when I was on the jury for Kevin Coe. It's most likely he's going to come out and do it again. We got to watch that stuff. But we have to do it on an individual basis, and we can't keep throwing money at the prisons without understanding where it's going, and we can't keep building them. This woman, my friend, she was subjected to all of this, and she didn't ask for it. It was just something that they came up with, and she was just that victim. And how is it supposed to help her mentally when she gets out? But building up the bond, building up friendship, that's why I encourage folks to reach out to the people that are locked up. That helps. You want a safer community? Understand that these people, no matter how evil their deed was, they're humans. And something triggered it. And the only way to find out is to have the resources, to invest in resources to preventative, or we'll say proactive approach rather than the reactive approach. Well, thanks for tuning in. And I hope you discuss this with your friends, family, loved ones, and just try maybe watch a documentary or read a book or just talk to a person was in the prison and get a better understanding of who's locked up in there so that we can prevent others from going in by using their life as an example, their mistakes as a foundation. Well, go out and have yourself a marvelous day and make fantastic memories for tomorrow.